and legs, she started to get some thighs, and she kept her physique. She kept an hourglass figure instead of losing those secondary sexual characteristics, which is what long distance running does, right? If you think about a marathon runner, you can't tell the men from the women. You change their clothes, they look the same. You can't tell a 70-year-old marathon winner from a 20-year-old. It's age accelerated. Because your body interprets that as extreme stress. Nature doesn't want you having babies if you're in an environment that is unstable. And that's the way it interprets long duration exercise. And then the answer to your second question, what makes paceexpress different is we've incorporated a new principle that I've been learning about recently. And that is that we're trying to get your heart and lungs challenged as quickly as possible, because that's what challenges your metabolism, your metabolic rate. But we've learned that there are only certain exercises that can do that. You know, to be able to really get you panting so that you develop an oxygen debt. You can do that with running, bicycling, you know, you have to use your whole body. But we've learned this principle of muscle sequencing, that we can use a much wider variety of exercises, exertions, if we sequence the muscles that you use. Because if you were to just try to, say, get your heart and lungs challenged by doing squats, you're going to just do, say, deep knee bends. Your quadricep muscles are going to fatigue, and they'll get tired to where you can't do it anymore, and your heart and lungs may only be moderately challenged at that point. But if we then follow that with, now you're doing jumping jacks, you're not using your quads anymore, you're using the adductors, the lateral movement of the upper hill. And then we follow that immediately with, say, push-ups, where you're not using those muscles, you're using your upper body, your chest and arms, that because of that sequencing of different muscles through that triad, we can more effectively challenge your heart and lungs. It makes the whole program work faster. That's the new principle that's in paceexpress. And Rob will be talking to you about that all the time as he's training you. He's going to be telling you how you're using that principle of muscle sequencing to make sure you get it challenged, even though individual muscle groups are showing you fatigue. Yes?
A lot of people I hear are opposed to dairy, saying that it creates excess mucus in the body. And I saw cheese and stuff like that on your list, so what's your take on that?
Excellent question. If you really want to be strict about following what is completely native, dairy would have no place. Because you think about it, in a native environment, you're not going to be, you know, able to go chase a water buffalo and obtain milk from it. So that's a very new addition to our diet. We didn't have domesticated animals before about 10,000 years ago, so most of us are still designed to live off of other food. For many people, the casein in milk presents an allergy. For other people, the lactose sugar in it. For people of African descent in particular, very small percentage have the enzyme lactase to be able to digest milk. All of those things combine to make it somewhat antibody stimulating. I think a good rule of thumb is if you've used dairy products and you're used to them and they don't present a problem for you, you can do it in moderation in this program. We want to focus on the most important elements, and dairy is, after all, a good source of vitamin D and a good source of protein. And as long as you're getting high protein, the right kind of fat, low carbohydrate, it will work. But for general health, dairy is not the best thing.
Where does beverages like wine fall in this? Like pure wine? I don't drink pop or anything like that. It's like water wine, so it's like
It's not excluded from what you can use. We try to measure.
Did everybody hear that? No. I think you'll like to hear that.
We tried to measure the glycemic index on wine, and we found that you have to consume 100 grams of carbohydrate and then measure the blood sugar and compare that blood sugar to 100 grams of straight sugar, and that's where you get the ratio to calculate glycemic index. We couldn't give people 100 grams of dry wine, because by the time they get 100 grams of carbohydrate, they're too intoxicated. So I don't think it's a big issue in moderation. Yes?
I was really excited to hear you say that you eat the foods you like. Because what I struggle with is, I'm particular, there's like a lot of food I just don't eat. There's a lot of things I just don't eat. And so in looking at that and hearing you say, don't eat stuff that you don't like. So I think Has that been a struggle for people, or is it really designed that you're not forced to kind of eat things you just...
You're going to be getting some basic rules that if you apply those, you should have enough latitude that you can find plenty of foods that you enjoy. There is one caveat to that, though, and you need to appreciate that part of what you like is influenced by your previous habits. And we've been brought up in a world where we were exposed to a lot of unnatural foods that you may develop the habit of eating, that you may have to use your conscious intelligence now to say, wait a minute, that's not a natural food. I'm going to find something else I like because that's not something that I would have eaten in a native environment. A good example is all the grain products that we eat. If you find grain in nature, you would have nothing to do with it. You try to eat wheat, it's going to taste horrible, it's going to be hard to swallow, and it's going to give you a bellyache, and you're never going to touch it again. But what we did is we violated that natural arrangement by having mechanisms, industry come along, break open that grain, and then worse, we made it taste like things we like. You like things that are salty for good reason. Salty foods that occur in nature are good for you. You like things that are sweet for good reason. It tells you when the fruit is ripe. And sweet things in nature are always good for you. I can't think of one naturally occurring fat that's not good for you. We like fatty foods for good reason. It means there's a lot of good fat-soluble vitamins in those things, and they're hard to come by in a lean environment. You have a preference for that for a good reason. Where we get into trouble is we take something like grain that you wouldn't want to touch in a native environment, and we use industry to fool ourselves. We add salt, we add fat, we add sugar to make that taste like something that if it were in your native environment you would like. So I'm just saying you've got to be aware of that don't let Procter & Gamble and Kellogg pull that one on. That you need to be eating things that are native that you like. And that's the issue. But there should be plenty of them for you. Yes?
Okay, so you said for the protein, would that be in the morning too? We will start with proteins.
I'm sorry, I didn't
For
hear.
proteins, so we will be starting with proteins. That would adjust into proteins to be more protein.
Yes.
Would that be complements of breakfast?
Yes. Breakfast is the most important meal, and it is most important that you start off with protein in the morning. You are breaking your fast. That's how it gets its name. So you haven't eaten for 12 hours or so. Your metabolism is primed. You can have the biggest influence on how your body interprets the environment for that day by making sure that you eat plenty of protein for breakfast. We have a supplement for you. They're not getting that yet, all right?
No.
You will be getting a supplement that's going to boost your protein.
Was that question for the quick express, the first week of the program, the first day will be nothing but protein?
Yes, that's another element of getting protein first. In addition to getting protein in the morning, as you initiate the program, you're going to be eating higher protein at the very beginning of it to convince your body that times are good. Then when you do other things, other steps, it will get the message that it can afford to use those high nutrients or can afford to get rid of fat.
And one more thing. So the book has a list of protein that is.
Yes, it does. And then we'll be giving you, in addition to what's in the book, we're going to be giving you a separate handout that we don't have yet, that we'll be getting on Tuesday, that gives you the basic rules of the eating plan.
And also, just so you know, on Tuesday, you're going to get a quick start meal plan that's a real basic 7-day approach to kind of like flushing a lot of this crap out of your body so that you can really kickstart this, and you'll get all that on Tuesday. You're going to get a whole lot of stuff on Tuesday, so I highly suggest you make it to class Tuesday.
Yes?
How does this exercise affect the appearance of cellulite?
That's a question. I hope you get a chance to talk to Yadi. She's my trainer who's coming in tonight. But that is very much her specialty. She's written a book on it. If you have more interest, we can make it available to you. But cellulite's a tough one. It is more dependent on percentage body fat than anything else. So the thing that you can do to minimize cellulite most is to lower your body fat, which is exactly what this program is intended to address. Yes?
2 questions. What happens to the extra skin? And have you noticed in your previous cases, does it affect their health, like high blood pressure, diabetes, anything else aside from losing the leg?
Absolutely. High blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, the topic of my first book, are all consequences of the same thing. It's this abnormal environment that's causing that constellation of modern disease. This is the cure. It's not to take a drug. It's not to have surgery. It's to fix the environmental things that cause them. And the same things that will make you lean also lower your blood pressure and lower your risk of diabetes and heart disease. And this is very much specific for that. As a matter of fact, I said I developed the exercise program to rehabilitate injured hearts. I developed most of the components of the PACE dietary eating plan to address those issues. Because that's my specialty in my clinic, is people come to me with high blood pressure, heart disease, have heart attacks and strokes, have diabetes, and we reverse it all. It's all reversible with this kind of a program. Yes, sir?
Have you done any studies as far as people that you've had in the program for years or whatever? What sort of percentage, after the 12 weeks, how hard is it to maintain, and how many people stick with it or fall back and end up putting weight back on?
The short answer is I have what I call category C evidence. When I speak at scientific conferences, if we've been able to publish the data and it's peer-reviewed, it's category A. Category B is inference from published studies, and category C is internal data and self-published data. I have a lot of that in category C. The percentage, though, varies by a lot of different parameters. It depends on what you're calling success, how much fat loss, how much change in body composition is your marking point. But in general, I can tell you this is far more effective than the 10 years I spent previously using more conventional methods. We get a much faster rate of fat loss, we get a much faster resolution of other health problems, and we get a much greater percentage of maintenance. Part of the reason for that, I think, is this is not very tough on your system. You don't feel like you're being denied, so you get a much higher compliance rate. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have 2 questions as well. What is your opinion on cooking with, natural oils like olive oil? And after the 12 weeks are up, will you be giving us specific techniques to maintain them?
The answer to the first question is, yeah, oil is very important. In general, you want to follow that litmus test that I've been talking about. If it's natural, native, it's probably good. If it's man-made, it's probably bad. So vegetables don't come with oils that you could use. So all vegetable oil is a man-made creation and a huge mistake. Olive oil is much easier, and you don't need that kind of steel press machinery to be able to get oil out of it. We've used it for much longer, it's much more natural. You can't cook at high heat in olive oil though. But there is a list in the handout that you got of the preferred oils. It gives them to you by category and tells you the oils that we prefer for cooking. The answer to your second question is yes, we would like for all of you to continue to be involved. After the first 6-week period, we want to repeat it. After that, we want as many as possible to just keep following it, and we want to keep tracking it as much as possible.
I haven't had time to really look through it, but I see menus of things that recommended to eat and all that stuff, and a lot of that, I see stuff that I don't particularly care for. So is somewhere in the information you've given us, or that you will be giving us, things that we can equate to that and replace instead of? And I understand why some of these things are good, because just from my own research.
Absolutely. I would share that exactly. If somebody handed that to me, I'd say, well, wait a minute, what about if I don't like those things? And that's just, those are examples for me.
Because
They
some of
are,
it's costly, and of course, you know, I have
yes,
freezers
they are
and stuff.
intended to illustrate how you can use the principles to create a meal plan and give you recipes for those of you who want to use it. But you will be getting on Tuesday a more generalized approach on how to use these rules to pick your own foods that you like.
Okay, unfortunately, right now, we've got to kind of wrap this up because there are some people on some tight timetables. Dr. Sears, are you on a timetable? Can you stay and talk to a few of these people
I
a
can
little bit?
stay. You want to just do it informally while you...
Yeah, so anybody that can kind of hang right now, that's great, and you know, he's happy to answer questions, and then what we'll do...
What makes your body build fat? What makes your body lose fat? And the revelation was very surprising. It's not what you think it is. It's not about calories. It's not about... Calories have some influence, of course, but it's not the predominant factor. It's not the way you win that game. The problem with cutting back on calories is in that you lower your metabolism, and it's like chasing your own tail. You don't get anywhere. What you have to do is you have to convince your body that you don't need fat. That's the key. And what we have with paceexpress is a system of exerting yourself. your whole metabolic engine. When we train that, we're training in the opposite direction of what fat is good for. You understand? We're going to force your body over time to pay attention to what it is that you're trying to teach it. Is by progressively, incrementally increasing the metabolic rate that you're exerting during the exertion period, you're going to force your body to pay attention to, hey, I have a new challenge here. I have to now make some adaptive response. What adaptive response do I need to make when the changing parameter of the exercise